Week 4 Activate Math Questions. Question number 1, what you see there circled is called a matrix, and you may or may not have seen those in your math classes to this point, but it's just a rectangular arrangement of numbers and or variables. So the question says, by definition, the determinant matrix equals AD minus BC. What is the value of that matrix, that determinant matrix, when x equals -3 and y equals 2? So even if you haven't worked with matrices previously, if you just do what you have done previously, you can get through this problem. So what I'm going to do first is substitute in values for x and y into my matrix. So the first entry is 2x, so that's going to be 2 times -3, which will give me -6. My second entry is 3y, so that's 3 times 2, so that will give me 6. My third entry is 5x, so that's 5 times -3, so that will be -15. And then my last entry is 4y, so that's 4 times 2, so that will be 8. So by plugging in those values, I can get a matrix with numbers only and with no variables. So once you substitute in, then it's just a matter of using your formula AD minus BC, and then I'm just simply going to use the positions of the numbers. So A times D, so that will be A times D, and that gives me a value of -48. Then I'm going to subtract from that B times C. So I've got B times C, and 6 times -15 is -90. So really you're doing -48 minus -90 or plus +90, which will give us a value of 42. So our answer is answer choice J, 42. Question number 2. When Angela was cleaning her refrigerator, she found 2 bottles of ketchup. Looking at the label, she noticed that the capacity of the larger bottle was twice the capacity of the smaller bottle. She estimated that the smaller bottle was about a third full of ketchup, and the larger bottle was about 2/3 full of ketchup. She poured all of the ketchup from the smaller bottle into the larger bottle. Then, about how full was the larger bottle? So you've got the larger bottle and you've got the smaller bottle. And since the question is asking ultimately about how full the larger bottle was, let's let the variable B represent the volume or the capacity of the larger bottle. So the larger bottle was about 2/3 full of ketchup. So we know that the larger right now is 2/3 B, or that's the amount of ketchup in that bottle. The smaller bottle, well, it says actually the larger bottle was twice the capacity of the smaller bottle. So if the larger bottle is twice the capacity of the smaller, that means the smaller bottle is a half of the capacity of the larger bottle. But then it says she estimated that the smaller bottle was about a third full of ketchup. So the smaller bottle was only a third full. So the larger bottle was 2/3 full, the smaller bottle was a third full, but again, the smaller bottle is half the capacity of the large. So if she combines the two by pouring the smaller into the larger, she would have the larger 2/3 full of ketchup plus, and if you go ahead and multiply this, 1/3 times 1/2 gives you 1/6 of the big bottle. And then when you combine those together, you can get common denominators if you don't feel comfortable or don't have a calculator at your or in your possession. 2/3 in terms of sixth is 4/6. So really you've got 4/6 of the bottle plus 1/6 of the bottle, which gives you 5/6 of the bottle, the larger bottle of ketchup. So our answer choice is C. That bottle is 5/6 full. An alternative approach would be to assign a value or a volume in terms of ounces to each bottle. For example, if you said that the larger bottle was 12 ounces of ketchup, that would mean the smaller bottle is 6 ounces of ketchup. And then that will let you say, well, what value then would be 2/3 and what value would be 1/3 of the smaller, and you can deal with actual numbers instead of variables. And then when you figure out how many ounces you have, you can compare that to how full the larger bottle would be. And that might be an easier approach if you think to assign values instead of working with variables. Question number 3 is a bit more straightforward. Kaya drove 200 miles in 5 hours of actual driving time. By driving an average of 10 miles per hour faster, she could have saved how many hours of actual driving time? So if she drove 200 miles in 5 hours of driving time, that means her average speed is 40 miles per hour. So if she goes 10 miles per hour faster, that means she's driving at a rate of 50 miles per hour. That being the case, go back to how long her trip was. Her trip was 200 miles. So if you take the 200 miles and divide it by her speed, her increased speed of 50 miles per hour, that means that that trip would have taken 4 hours of driving time. Originally, she had 5 hours of driving time. If she drove faster, she only has 4 hours of driving time. So she is actually saving herself 1 hour of driving time. So that will be answer choice D. Question 4 asks, what number can you add to the numerator and denominator of 7/9 to get 1/2? So you're starting with 7/9, but you're wanting to add the same number to the numerator and the denominator. So if you add x to both the numerator and the denominator, that same number, you're trying to figure out what that number must be in order to get 7/9 to equal 1/2. Well, you have essentially a proportion set up where you could cross multiply to solve for x. So when you multiply the numerator by the denominator, the numerator of the first fraction by the denominator on the other side of the equation, don't forget to multiply both terms. So 7 times 2 is 14, plus x times 2 is 2x. Set that equal to the product in the other direction. 1 times 9 plus x is simply 9 plus x. Then you'll collect your like variables. So you'll subtract x from both sides. So you'll have 14 plus x equals 9, and those x's will cancel out. And then you'll subtract 14 from both sides of the equation. So x will equal -5. So if you add -5 to both the numerator and denominator, you will get a value of 1/2. Now, if you do not know how to set up that problem in order to find the value of -5, you could always start plugging in values to see which ones worked. And I'll do that to kind of check my answer. So 7 plus -5 is equal to 2. And in the denominator, 9 plus negative 5 is equal to 4. And then 2 over 4 reduces to 1/2. So even if you did not know how to set up an equation, since this is a multiple choice problem, you can plug in your answer choices to find the correct choice. And then finally, the last question, what is the slope of the line given by the equation 14x minus 11y plus 16 equals 0? So what you have is a linear equation in general form. Some people might call it standard form. And to see the slope, you probably want to get your equation into slope-intercept form, which means y has been isolated, or y is by itself. So the first thing I'll do is move this positive 16 to the other side of the equation. So that will give me 14x minus 11y equals negative 16. Then I'll need to move my 14x to the other side of the equation. So I'll have negative 11y equals negative 14x minus 16. And then the last step in getting y by itself is to divide both sides of my equation by negative 11. So I'll be left with y equals, and then I have a negative 14 over negative 11, so that's 14/11 x, and then I'll have a minus or negative 16 over negative 11, so that again will be positive 16/11. And I've transformed the equation from a general form to slope-intercept form, where the coefficient of the x is the slope of that line. So my answer choice is J.